Welcome back to the Noir Archive. Today, we open a secret archive from the closing days of World War II. High in the Austrian Alps, a serene lake hides a dark history. It's a story of counterfeit millions, desperate escapes, and a treasure that men have died trying to find. This is the mystery of Lake Toplitz and the secret operation that was meant to stay buried forever. The sound of the wind whistling through the sheer limestone cliffs of the Alps is unlike any sound you've ever heard. It moans, like the voices of souls trying to cling to life in the freezing cold of Styria, Austria. At the foot of those majestic mountains, hidden behind dense ancient forests, lies a pitch-black, terrifyingly still mirror, Lake Toplitz. In the world of diving, people call this place the Blue Death. Toplitz is not an ordinary lake, it is a bizarre geological entity. Due to its unique chemical structure, from a depth of 20 meters downward, the lake is completely devoid of oxygen. In that eternal bottom, time seems to stand still. Trees that fell hundreds of years ago, creatures that accidentally fell in, and discarded secrets all are preserved perfectly in the darkness, never decomposing. It is like a massive archive of nature, waiting to swallow anything that touches the salty water at the deep bottom. April 1945. The Third Reich was dying in the flames of collapse. While Berlin shook under a rain of bombs, in this remote mountainous region, a final play of darkness was being staged. Heavy trucks bearing SS insignia quietly crawled through rugged trails under the thick night. Dim headlights swept through ancient pine roots, tearing through the dense fog. Silent Secret Service soldiers, guns at the ready, guarded heavy wooden chests meticulously sealed with the wax of the Reichsbank. Each chest was pushed into the pitch-black lake. The sound of water splashing up was dry and sharp, then quickly swallowed by the abyss. When the last truck left, Lake Toplitz returned to its usual stillness, but beneath that thick layer of mud, a massive treasure or a terrible curse had been officially buried. Since that day, Toplitz has become a deadly magnet. Dozens of divers, from amateur treasure hunters to seasoned experts, have dived into these misty waters to search for answers. But many of them never returned. Did they die from pressure, from the ancient trees tangled like a labyrinth, or because they accidentally touched things that the darkness did not want revealed? Lake Toplitz holds more than just gold. It holds secrets that people were willing to kill to protect. Tonight, we will open the darkest files, diving deep into the Blue Death to find out what is truly lying at the bottom of Lake Toplitz. And why, after more than 80 years, has its curse never cooled down? Welcome to the Noir Archive. We start now. Inside the gray walls and barbed wire of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, not far from Berlin, existed a parallel world full of paradoxes. While thousands of prisoners were dying of exhaustion and hunger in the outer areas, in blocks 18 and 19, a special group of prisoners enjoyed strange privileges. They wore civilian clothes, were fed meat, smoked, and even had radios to listen to music. But the price of that favor was a mission heavier than death, to become gears in Heinrich Himmler's economic destruction machine. This was the birthplace of Operation Bernhard, one of the most large-scale and sophisticated money counterfeiting plots in human history. In 1942, as the situation of World War II began to turn unfavorable for the Axis powers, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS and the architect of genocidal crimes, realized that bombs and bullets were not the only weapons that could subdue England. He needed a weapon that could strike at the heart of the empire, the British pound. Himmler's idea was extremely sinister. If millions, even billions, of fake pounds could be pumped into the market, the value of the currency would collapse. Runaway inflation would wipe out the British economy, making people lose faith in the government and paralyzing London's ability to pay for military activities. Himmler called it a total assault on the enemy's vital system. This mission was assigned to Bernhard Kruger, an SS officer with an organizational mind and knowledge of printing techniques. Kruger understood that for this plan to succeed, the fake money could not just look like real money, it had to be physically real money. Every tiny detail, from the linen fibers in the paper to the chemical formula of the ink, had to be recreated perfectly to the point of being indistinguishable. To realize this insane plot, Kruger conducted a sweep across concentration camps to find the best artisans. These were Jewish printers, engravers, chemical experts, and painters. They were brought to Sachsenhausen and placed under immense pressure. If they succeeded, they lived another day; if they failed, they would be sent straight to the gas chambers. The central figure of this group of prisoners was Salomon Smolyanov, a notorious Russian counterfeiter who had been wanted across Europe before the war. Smolyanov was not just a printer, he was a painting genius with hands capable of recreating microscopic details on zinc plates. Under the strict supervision of SS guards, Smolyanov and his teammates began a race against time. They faced technical challenges that seemed insurmountable. Printing paper: the British used a special paper made from linen fibers. The group of prisoners had to test hundreds of different formulas, even sending paper samples for atomic structure analysis to find the specific roughness and sound when the bill was crumpled. Watermarks: this was the biggest barrier. They had to meticulously engrave every ultra-thin copper wire to create the watermark inside the paper structure right from the pulp production stage. Serial number system: they decoded the complex mathematical algorithm that the Bank of England used for numbering, ensuring that no two fake bills had the same serial number in the same batch. Finally, after tireless efforts, the product of Sachsenhausen was born. To check for accuracy, the SS performed a cruel test: they took these fake bills to banks in Switzerland. The result was terrifying. Leading European financial experts confirmed they were 100% real money. Even when the Bank of England was notified about the appearance of counterfeit money, they themselves could not point out which were products from their own printing house and which were from the Nazi concentration camp. From 1943 to early 1945, the workshop at Sachsenhausen produced about 134 million counterfeit British pounds. This figure was equivalent to about 15 to 20% of the total cash in circulation in England at that time. Operation Bernhard was an absolute technical success. The SS began using this money to fund international espionage activities, buy weapons from the black market, and bribe officials in neutral countries. However, as the war entered its final stage, Himmler's plan to use planes to drop money over London was never executed because the German army had completely lost control of the skies. Instead of collapsing the British economy, this fake money became a massive piece of evidence for the crimes of the SS. In the spring of 1945, the roar of the Soviet Red Army artillery began to shake the window panes in Berlin. The Third Reich was collapsing like a house of cards. In a panic, Bernhard Kruger received orders to destroy the entire workshop. All machinery was smashed, and the priceless zinc plates were melted down. The prisoners, the keepers of the final secrets, were packed onto cramped train cars to be moved south to the Ebensee concentration camp in Austria to await execution to silence them. But what about the tons of fake money and the most secret documents of the SS security agency? They could not be completely burned in a short time without attracting attention. A fateful decision was made in the dark: all these assets would be packed into steel-bound wooden chests and transported to the remote Alpine region. The target was Lake Toplitz. A still lake with no oxygen in its deep bottom, where the SS believed all evidence would be preserved forever from the hands of the Allies, waiting for the day the Fourth Reich would rise and reclaim this capital. April 1945, the forest trails in Austria became the scene of a chaotic escape. SS truck convoys drove madly through the night, headlights only allowed a tiny slit to avoid Allied fighter planes. SS soldiers pushed exhausted prisoners to walk through the freezing snow, while guns were still held at the ready to protect the mysterious chests. At Lake Toplitz, the air was thick with fear. Commanding officers shouted orders to drop the chests into the water as the roar of American tanks could already be heard from the valley on the other side. Each heavy chest containing millions of fake pounds, the sweat, blood, and lives of Jewish prisoners, sank into the blue-black water. When the lake surface returned to its flat state, The last SS soldiers stripped off their uniforms, threw away their weapons, and hid in the deep forest like ghosts. They left behind a massive secret under the abyss, beginning a dark legend that has lasted for over 80 years. Operation Bernhard ended in the failure of an empire, but it opened a new chapter full of blood and tears at the bottom of Lake Toplitz. May 1945, the Alps of the Styria region did not welcome spring with birdsong or vibrant flowers. Instead, the air was thick with the smell of sulfur, half-burned diesel, and the smell of defeat. As Hitler's thousand-year empire crumbled into fragments in Berlin, this remote mountain region became the final shelter for the darkest secrets. In the darkness of the old pine trees, a large-scale burial operation took place, turning Lake Toplitz from a peaceful scenic spot into a mass grave of national secrets. In the small village of Gossel nestled by the neighboring Lake Grundlsee, the people lived the final days of the war in absolute terror. They did not fear the approaching Allies, but rather the sentinels of the Third Reich lurking in the forest. One of the last witnesses, Mr. Alois Rodaskal, who was only a teenager at the time, recalled the sleepless nights in early May 1945. Those were nights when the silence of the mountains was torn apart by the roar of heavy military truck engines. They came like ghosts in the night, he recalled in a trembling voice. Large trucks covered tightly with tarps, headlights dimmed to leave only a narrow slit of light, sweeping through the ancient forest like demon eyes. We were ordered to stay inside, turn off all lights. Anyone curious enough to look out the window could receive a bullet to the head. Besides the sound of the trucks, witnesses also described sounds that shook the ground. Loud explosions came from Lake Toplitz, echoing between the sheer cliffs of the Totensberg Mountains. People rumored that the SS were using explosives to destroy cave entrances or scuttle heavy military equipment. The fire from the explosions cast a premonitory crimson glow into the night sky, reflecting on the lake like an omen of the apocalypse of a dynasty. At the western shore of the lake, where the cliffs stood like natural ramparts, the SS forces established a strict exclusion zone. Under dim flashlight beams, robust squads of soldiers began transporting steel-bound wooden chests from the truck beds to small rowboats. Each chest bore the encoded symbols of the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA, and the Reichsbank. The question is, why, among thousands of lakes in the Alps, did the Nazis choose Toplitz as their final hiding place? There are 3 reasons that made Toplitz the most perfect safe in the world. Rugged terrain. Lake Toplitz is located in an extremely isolated position. There is only one narrow trail leading to the lake, flanked by sheer cliffs hundreds of meters high. A small SS squad could easily block this entrance, preventing any intrusion from outside. Dead water structure. This is the most important reason scientifically. Toplitz is a meromictic lake. There is no turnover between the water layers. From a depth of 20 meters downward, the water is completely devoid of oxygen and has extremely high salinity. In this environment, decomposing bacteria cannot survive. This means that paper, fake money, wood, chests, and metal will be preserved almost intact for centuries. The SS knew they weren't just hiding things, they were mummifying their secrets. Natural Sentinel Network. The bottom of Lake Toplitz is a labyrinth of ancient trees that have fallen over thousands of years of landslides. These trees do not rot, they intertwine to create a natural barrier network, ready to trap any diver or damage any primitive exploration equipment of that time. Each heavy chest was taken to the center of the lake, where the water depth reached over 100 meters. With short, dry commands, SS soldiers pushed them into the abyss. A splash echoed, bubbles rose for a moment and then disappeared completely. Millions of counterfeit pounds, priceless zinc plates, and perhaps even documents that could collapse many post-war governments were handed over to eternal darkness. When the 71st U.S. Infantry Division entered the Styria region in mid-May 1945, they were prepared for a bloodbath in the Alpine fortress. But instead, they only found a haunting silence. Lake Toplitz appeared before the American soldiers like a still mirror, deep blue and poetic. There was not a single Nazi in sight, no guns. On the lake shore, they only found trucks that had been burned to ashes, piles of ashes from documents that had been hurriedly destroyed, and a few scraps of fake British pound notes left in the wind. The lake surface looked so peaceful, but it was a false peace. Beneath that pure appearance were tons of metal and documents lying deep in the thick mud. The Americans began gathering information from locals about Hitler's gold. There was not a single Nazi in sight, no guns. On the lake shore, they only found trucks that had been burned to ashes, piles of ashes from documents that had been hurriedly destroyed, and a few scraps of fake British pound notes left in the wind. The lake surface looked so peaceful, but it was a false peace. Beneath that pure appearance were tons of metal and documents lying deep in the thick mud. The Americans began gathering information from locals about Hitler's gold. Many reports indicated that a large amount of Nazi Germany's gold reserves vanished from Berlin before the Red Army surrounded the city. It was believed that fake money was only a decoy to distract, while the heaviest chests, containing real gold and stolen priceless paintings, were the main targets sunk to the bottom of the lake. At the same time, there was the mysterious disappearance of the officers directly involved in the chest-hiding operation. Bernhard Kruger and his close SS officers seemed to have evaporated into thin air. There were rumors that they used the fake money they kept to bribe their way through escape routes via the Vatican to South America, known as the Ratlins. They carried with them Swiss bank account codes and perfectly printed false identities from the Sachsenhausen camp. Their disappearance left a deadly void. Lake Toplitz became a crime scene without a perpetrator, a tomb without a guardian but with the power to kill anyone who dared to trespass. The name Lake Toplitz began to be recorded on the blacklists of treasure hunters and intelligence agencies as a place that is easy to enter, but hard to leave. The curse of Nazi gold was not just a myth, it was written in the blood of those who tried to challenge the darkness of the Blue Death in the following years. Lake Toplitz is still there, quietly hiding tons of metal under the mud, waiting for the day technology or human madness will pull them to the surface. But in that year of 1945, it perfectly fulfilled its role, a secret vault of the devil. The period from 1946 to 1963 is considered the Noir era of Lake Toplitz. As the gunfire of World War II ceased, another war silently began beneath the black-blue waters of the Alps. It was a war of greed, obsession, and dark forces that did not want the past to be unearthed. During these years, Lake Toplitz was no longer just a geographical location, it became a living entity, a loyal sentinel guarding the secrets of a fallen empire. Rumors of Hitler's gold spread like a virus among free divers and international treasure hunters. But Toplitz soon proved it was not a place for the faint of heart or the unprepared. The 1946 case, two German divers, believed to be naval veterans, arrived at the lake with primitive diving equipment. A few days later, their bodies were found floating on the surface. The official conclusion was an accident due to pressure, but leaked forensic reports showed bruises around their necks as if they had been strangled before being put back into the water. The disappearance of Jean-Claude, 1950, a French engineer, vanished without a trace while surveying the eastern shore. His tent remained intact, food was still cooking on the stove, but its owner seemed to have dissolved into the fog. A month later, his shoe was found by a probe robot at a depth of 60 meters, but his body was never recovered. The 1952 warning, a group of amateur divers was attacked by gunshots from the forest just as they touched a metallic object at the bottom of the lake. This incident confirmed a terrifying reality: Lake Toplitz was not abandoned. Independent investigators began to suspect the existence of Odessa, Organisation der Ehemaligen SS Einheiten, a secret network of former SS members. The hypothesis was that Lake Toplitz did not just contain gold. It held the gold list, the names of undercover agents, traitors within the Allied ranks who had taken bribes, and information on secret bank accounts in Argentina. If these documents were brought to light, it would cause a political earthquake capable of toppling many post-war governments. Anyone who appears at Toplitz with a diving suit falls under the gaze of eyes hiding behind the old pine trees. Strangers in black trench coats driving luxury cars frequently appeared at local hotels during this period. They didn't hunt, they didn't hike, they just sat there, watching the lake. They were the sentinels of Odessa, tasked with ensuring that the secrets of the Third Reich would never surface. In 1959, the silence was finally broken when the German magazine Stern decided to sponsor a large-scale salvage operation with the most modern technology of the time. Under the strict supervision of the Austrian police, the first chests were brought to the surface after 14 years at the bottom of the abyss. When the wooden lids were pried open, thousands of British pound notes in denominations of 5 and 10 spilled out. Due to the lake's oxygen-free environment, these bills were still brand new, sharp in every detail. However, the joy of finding treasure quickly gave way to shock when experts confirmed they were all counterfeit money from Operation Bernhard. Millions of fake pounds were immediately destroyed by the Austrian government, but was that all? At the bottom of a few special chests, wrapped in leather layers and waterproof wax, divers found what Odessa feared most. The spy list, thick dossiers, and although the ink was slightly blurred, the names of hundreds of Third Reich agents living under new identities in London and New York could still be read. Account codes, sequences of numbers and symbols related to banks in Switzerland, leading to massive fortunes that had been laundered through intermediaries. Experiment files, blueprints for chemical weapons and rocket technology that the Allies knew nothing about. The 1959 salvage proved one thing: Lake Toplitz was indeed a massive secret archive. But it raised an even bigger question: if 72 million fake pounds only made up a small portion of the chests dropped, what did the remaining chests, the ones divers couldn't reach under 5 meters of deep mud, contain? Was Lake Toplitz truly just a grave for counterfeit money, or did it hide an even more horrific truth about what humans are capable of in the shadows of war? Entering the 1980s, rubber diving suits and primitive oxygen tanks were replaced by remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, and multi-beam sonar systems. These electronic eyes promised to pierce the eternal night of Lake Toplitz, peeling back the layers of mud that had sealed the truth for 40 years. Yet, the more modern the technology became, the more people realized that Toplitz was not just a lake, it was an entity actively protecting its own secrets. For decades, the phrase "Hitler's gold" had lured countless greedy souls to Styria. However, through the lens of robot expeditions in the 1980s, analysts began to ask a more practical question: do real gold bars actually exist under that mud? In reality, the amount of gold owned by the Reichsbank at the end of the war had been scattered everywhere. Some was seized by the Allies at the Merkur salt mines, some disappeared on ghost trains heading south. At Toplitz, sonar scans showed many heavy metal signals deep beneath 5 to 10 meters of sediment. But many intelligence experts believe that gold here is just a noir metaphor. Black gold, the lists of spies and scientific files valuable enough to change the world's landscape. White gold, millions of high-quality fake British pounds capable of collapsing any financial system if released at the right time. For the SS, these documents were more precious than gold because they were the passage for a future revival. Robots found many fragments of wooden chests, but most were filled with mud and rotten paper. This raised a hypothesis: was the real gold moved by Odessa immediately after the war, or is it still lying in a secret rocky niche that robots have never touched? Lake Toplitz is not only famous for fake money, it is also a red coordinate on the map of those hunting for the Amber Room, the eighth wonder of the world that vanished after the Germans retreated from the Catherine Palace, Russia. Why does Toplitz always appear in Amber Room theories? The connection between officers: some SS officers who directly supervised the packing of the amber panels in Königsberg were the same ones who appeared in the Styria region in May 1945. Witness memories: a few locals reported to the US military seeing giant and elongated chests unlike money chests being moved onto rowboats and taken to the middle of the lake during the final nights of the war. Amber is a fossil resin. It is extremely sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. The oxygen-free environment and stable year-round temperature at the bottom of Lake Toplitz would be a perfect archive to preserve the luster and structure of the amber. Robot probes in the 1990s recorded sonar reflection signals with shapes similar to architectural blocks, but they lay deep beneath a natural labyrinth that made access impossible. When ROVs dived to depths over 80 meters, the technicians' control screens often displayed haunting images. The bottom of Lake Toplitz is not a flat layer of mud. Instead, it is a graveyard of ancient trees. Due to geological landslides spanning thousands of years, tens of thousands of old pine trunks have fallen into the lake. Because the water has no oxygen, the wood does not rot. They are piled on top of each other, intertwined like giant fangs pointing back toward the surface. The death trap, these trees form a natural barrier network. Robots frequently get their signal cables snagged, and if a diver falls in here, they will never find their way out in the pitch darkness. Eerie imagery: under the robot's LED lights, the leafless trees appear like dark entities, thin arms trying to hold onto the SS chests. In 2000, a US expedition captured an image of a disc-shaped metallic object stuck between two large trunks. Some claimed it was the lid of a secret vault, others believed it was part of a secret Nazi weapon testing device. But before the robot could move closer, an unexpected mudflow surged, completely obscuring the view, as if the lake was actively defending itself. Why, after nearly a century, are we still unable to let go of Lake Toplitz? The answer lies in the psychology of unsolved mysteries. In the blood of every treasure hunter or historian, Lake Toplitz represents a gray zone of history where the line between truth and myth is blurred. This obsession comes not only from the material value of gold or amber, but from the fear and curiosity about what humans can hide. Toplitz is a mirror reflecting the dark side of humanity. We look down into those pitch-black waters and see the hidden corners of our own history, unpunished crimes, sunk ambitions, and secrets people were willing to kill to protect. The presence of the wooden sentinels or the ghosts of Odessa are merely symbols of humanity's futile effort to control the past. Ultimately, Lake Toplitz teaches us, some things are best left to the darkness. Because when we try to pull a secret out of the mud, we simultaneously awaken the dark entities that rightfully belong to an era humanity never wants to repeat. Today, if you stand on the shores of Lake Toplitz on an autumn afternoon, you will see an incredibly peaceful scene. The Alps reflect on the still, emerald green water. There is no more sound of SS truck engines, no more gunpowder explosions, and no more chaotic crowds of treasure hunters. Austria has officially placed Toplitz on the list of nature reserves, issuing a strict diving ban for all individuals. Lake Toplitz has found the silence it once had before being caught in the vortex of the Third Reich. However, that silence does not mean the mystery has vanished. Under the thick layer of mud and the oxygen-free environment, the remnants of Operation Bernhard, chemical barrels, and perhaps even the priceless amber panels, still lie there intact as the day they were thrown in 1945. The truth at Toplitz may never be fully revealed. It has fossilized within the earth, becoming a part of geology, a historical black box for which humanity has lost the key. The tightening of government management is not only to protect the environment but also an effort to end the cycle of tragedy. Toplitz has taken too many lives, so too much obsession and bottomless greed. Sometimes, the best way to protect history is to let it sleep. After all the searching, the true treasure of Lake Toplitz is not shimmering gold bars or millions of fake pounds. That treasure is the heritage of ashes. It is a stark reminder of humanity's mad ambition and the horrific price of war. Each fake banknote pulled from the bottom of the lake is evidence of a plot to collapse civilization through deception. Each death of a diver is proof that greed can lead humans into an abyss with no exit. Lake Toplitz is not just a lake, it is a mirror reflecting the deepest darkness in the human soul, where betrayal and cruelty once reigned. History has closed its bloodiest pages, but the ghosts of Toplitz are still there, whispering in the cold winds whistling through the Alpine ridges. They remind us that the past never truly disappears, it is just waiting beneath those cold waters. One final question for you, travelers of the darkness, between gold and silver and the truth, what would you choose? And if you stood before that blue abyss, would you dare risk your life to know the truth? Thank you for going deep into the heart of the Toplitz abyss with Noir Archive. If you find yourself fascinated by the unsolved mysteries of history, don't forget to press subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next files. In the next episode, we will leave the Alps for secret tunnels in Poland, where an armored train full of Nazi gold is believed to still be missing inside a mountain. The Polish gold train, truth or just an illusion? See you in the next chapter of the Noir Archive.